Hey everybody, I'm back. Finally getting ready to review Green Lantern Road to Emerald Twilight and the downfall of Hal Jordan. Uh, this is written by Gerard Jones, and uh, I was planning on just sticking with the because I never actually read. I knew about it, but I didn't actually read it thoroughly. Of the Fall from Grace with Hal. It turns out there's only like what 4 or 5 issues. I'm pretty sure it's 4, but I felt it was a little too short considering it. Later on coincide because this is only 50 issues. There's more, but it kind of coincides with the introduction of Kyle Rayner, which the next comic book review will be about him and him learning to be a Green Lantern and dealing with Parallax and evil Hal Jordan. So I'll make that like a whole separate my next review that's gonna be about that. But for right now, I'm I always thought there will be like a good lead up, so I figured, okay, let's cover the first 50 issues with Hal Jordan that is intertwined with the return of Barry Allen after his supposed death in Final Crisis, and the whole background or backdrop later on with the death of Superman and return of Superman. All that was going on in the background. So yeah, I thought it was like a more meat to it, or at least a better lead up. But they still a lead up, but you can see it kind of seated here and there, which kind of as I was reading it, okay, now it kind of makes better sense. But I kind of wish Jones was a little bit more concise, because it seems kind of quick. But we also, get a little bit with Guy Gardner and John Stewart, who each of these three are going through their own personal issues. Right now, Hal Jordan. Oh, and by the way, before I continue, please do me a huge favor and like this video. Leave a comment below. I know it's been like a while since my last comic book review, and I've been trying to get through this. But I also had other obligations that kind of like, either with the channel or some personal stuff. So I try to get it done when I got it done. So, I've been promising, but it's here now. So, anyway. So Hal decides that, okay, he was needed to do some soul searching. So he's pretty much kind of like put his Green Lantern side, his persona aside, and just kind of roam the earth, going from town to town, doing odd jobs, just trying to reconnect with himself a bit, because he's kind of like forgetting himself. He's not working with Ferris Air anymore. For right now, Carol is still quote unquote missing. And possibly taken over by Star Sapphire, because if you know any kind of Green Lantern lore, that Star Sapphire used to be the enemy of Green Lantern, and it would have made it more complicated. That was she was possessed by the Star Sapphire ring belonging to the Star Sapphires, who are the rings of love, as the Green Lantern rings of willpower. And Star Sapphire was just obsessed, possessive, like very toxic side of love. So, and then the whole Guardians, who gives the rings, they're off with the Tamarins, this other alien race that I'm pretty sure is responsible for creating the Tamarins or Zamarins? I keep conflating those two with the uh uh. Wait a minute, aren't they? Hold on, I gotta look this up because I'm remembering like Teen Titans Star Sapphire, because they can't be the same race. Sorry, I had to quickly look this up because it's dawned on me. Because like, hold on. Oh. Okay, Zamarins. Yeah, the Guardians made it, with the Zamarins, who's another ancient race of beings. Uh, but let me look this up really quick. TEENTITANS Teen Titans. Let's go. TEENTITANS Teen. Sorry, song's so good. Uh, I need to do some Teen Titans uh comic reviews. I want to check out that Earth One Teen Titans. I probably should start off with like the main Teen Titans, at least the ones that we more familiar with because of the show. Not Teen Titans Go. Never that. Okay, Star Sapphire. Yeah, Tamarins is where Star Sapphire. Sorry. Yeah, Starfire. That's why I was getting confused. Starfire, not Star Sapphire. Two different. Starfire comes from Tamarins, a different race of beings altogether. Zamarins are responsible for giving Star Sapphire her ring of love. So yeah, two different things. That's why I was keep conflating the two. It's like, okay, sorry. I just had to figure that out because like I keep conflating them because of the names so closely intertwined and they kind of rhyme. So that's where the confusion is. But anyway, so Hal Jordan is kind of stepping away from not only because since the Green Lantern Corps is pretty much obliterated, most of the core members are dead and gone. The powder battery is kind of like you know dim or whatever, just enough for these three, Hal, John, and Guy, to still utilize their powers. But so pretty much like John Stewart is in space. He's on Oa. He's dealing with a problem on his own. Which I was trying to look up like a John Stewart origin or whatever like that, but it's intertwined with Hal Jordan quite a bit. And there's one called Mosaic that's very centered on him, which this arc talks about it, but I think they kind of wrap it up in a John Stewart thing. But I'll touch on that in a little bit. But John Stewart is going through some stuff on Oil currently, and he's already, because he was married to this alien girl who was part of the Green Lantern Corps, but she got killed by Star Sapphire, in order to rile up Hal Jordan. And so John Stewart is like going through that, emotional turmoil. Guy Gardner is going through his own little stuff because he right now is part of the, the Justice League currently. But most of the crew do not like him because Guy Gardner is well known to be an a-hole. Despite being still a good guy, he is got like an ass way of doing things. Uh, so everybody's upset that Hal's kind of stepping away because they preferred to work with Hal rather than Guy Gardner because he's kind of like an immature a-hole. So Hal ends up, doing his little soul searching and going from town to town. He ends up meeting this girl named Rose who works on his farm, and for a roof and a cot, he helps her tills the land because there's certain like obligations that needs like that's physical labor that she just cannot do. So he fulfills that, and she kind of get a little smitten with him. She has a son who kind of looks up to him because there's no father in the picture, and he provides that kind of, fatherly kind of role that's lacking in this single mother type of scenario. But of course, they all get completely turned upside down thanks to Guy Gardner butting in, won't leave Hal alone. And so she didn't, because he didn't come clean about who he was, because he's trying to like distance himself from it for a while. So she gets upset because, if he wasn't honest with her, she doesn't know who she bringing into her freaking home. So he kind of, just leaves, and Guy constantly is, got nothing better else to do but just to hound Hal. Eventually, because like I said, Guy is pretty much like, I hate to just throw on the word insecurity because people just use that just willy-nilly for every little thing. When somebody raises any type of objections or boundaries, they just throw that word just frivolously. But here I think it kind of fits with Guy Gardner, who is just like, because he's pretty much like the, because Guy Gardner was brought in as like a substitute, Green Lantern to watch over Earth, while Hal, because Green Lantern Corps it's like they're space cops, kind of intertwined with the military, because military personnel have to be on tour, and when there's obligations that require a Green Lantern to be in space and monitoring their space sector, which is like their particular galaxy, or solar system or whatever. Hal can't be relegated to Earth all the time. He has to check out these other planets and make sure they're okay, because they have to pretty much patrol. They got to be on patrol. They can't be relegated. It's kind of like a cop only monitoring their neighborhood. They got to go to other neighborhoods too. But understandably, Earth can't be without a Green Lantern. So eventually they allow, they should also allow more other planets having more of their races becoming Green Lanterns, so that way they'll have some kind of reserve unit to monitor their planets while another is in space. Just like Earth has like a plethora of human Green Lanterns. Right now, there's like at least 7 of them. Honestly, most people in general remember the 4, like, Kyle, Guy, John, and Hal. But now we got Far Sector chick. I don't even remember her name, but I remembered her goofy little glasses that kind of look like plexiglass, and this little black girl. I freaking forgot her name. Oh, and of course, there's Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz. They got pretty famous in the over a handful of years. Those two are more definitely well known because they're very popular and written very well. But the latest two, I I scarcely remember their names. I remember what they look like because they're very distinct. I give the creators that. At least they made them very distinct looking. Uh, you have to be because they can't all be wearing the exact same stuff as Hal is. They got to have some unique kind of garb to distinguish themselves from each other. Uh, and I really appreciate. Well, I'm not sure how many writers even remember how to keep this going, but I do appreciate that each, at least when it comes to the first four, each of those guys have a distinct way of creating their constructs. Because, well, Hal and Guy, have very simple constructs. However, Guy just bursting with willpower when, because I'm not sure which writer did it, but they made it, because you can look it up. Guy is just kind of bursting with will because he's just like such a gung ho kind of guy that his ring kind of sparks because it's kind of overflowing, ready to just like burst and be used because he's like always a go-to, like less head in first, kind of person. John Stewart is an architect, so when he is doing his constructs, a lot of times it's like a blueprint being sketched into existence, kind of thing. And he's a military guy, so of course is very tactical. And Kyle Rayner, he's a graphic artist, so his stuff is very 3D sketch kind of, anime, a manga type of, constructs, which is my personal favorite. After that, they kind of dropped off that kind of. I guess they can't keep it up because they keep introducing new Earth-based Green Lanterns. But I always like that, how they all make constructs, but they do it in very distinct ways, given their either their job given their day-to-day job or their sensibilities. It's so tied into how they make their constructs, and I kind of wish they kind of kept that going because that makes each Green Lantern super unique, at least with the Earth-based ones. I'm not sure about like that Far Sector chick or how she makes her constructs, and I think she's also from the military too, but I can't remember. I don't read her comics, but I remember there was a big push for that Far Sector Green Lantern. But even with Simon Baz or Jessica Cruz, I think Simon Baz is a mechanic. I think that's what his day job is. I don't even remember Jessica Cruz what her day job is. Only thing I remember about Jessica Cruz, which she got over, but she has like she had a phobia about being outside among people, a bit of an anxiety kind of thing, which she kind of sort of got over because that was like a big thing in her early inception. I'm getting off on a tangent here because I really love Green Lanterns and their little slice of their DC world. But I kind of wish they kind of kept up that theme where each Earth-based Green Lantern has their own distinct way of making constructs. It's kind of like, God, why y'all drop off that? It's so creative. Anyway, Guy Gardner, his insecurities is so intertwined with how, because Hal is the top dog Green Lantern. He's the best of them. And so if he's, having, second thoughts and not believing in himself, he's, weary, world weary and everything like that. So it's like, oh, then if he's having second thoughts about himself, what's about me? Am I less than or something like that? Of course, he ain't articulating this. He's not communicating this in a healthy way. So he does what a Guy Gardner thing does. He just want to find something to hit. So he ends up fighting a retired villain who's trying to just, working on his job, this Green Lantern rogue called Tattoo, who kind of makes his tattoos come to life, kind of like his own version of a construct. And he ends up picking a fight with this guy who wasn't doing anything. Then while Hal ends up finding work, on a fishing boat, guy brings the fight all the way to him, and then all three get in a fight with each other because Hal is just super annoyed with Guy. But the fight ended, and of course Tattoo ends up like getting away, but now he's going to get back into the whole villain thing because Guy couldn't leave him alone. Oh well, John Stewart is dealing with this rogue guardian who didn't go off with the Zamarins to mate. He prior to all that decided to explore the world through mortal eyes, and he explored Earth and other different planets. But eventually he gotten crazy and obsessive, and so he pretty much captured John Stewart and started messing with his mind. So John is trying to he's using his will to try to reach out to Guy and Hal in order to mount some kind of rescue mission, because this dude is going to try to go off to other planets and start to take cities to form like a new Oa or something like that. While this is carrying on, once again, Guy keeps on pestering Hal until a point where Hal is like, okay, I had enough. They're at this diner, and I know on the surface it kind of looks like crazy guy stuff, how guys typically handle stuff. But I think this is just as healthy. I can make the argument. Hal had enough. He decides, okay, I tried reasoning with you to leave me alone. I told you like 1,000 times, and you just kept pestering me. And because, of course, Guy doesn't want to sit there and just actually talk out, how he's really feeling, because he's feeling like, if he tells how he's feeling a little bit, a little down on himself, or at least insecure about himself, or second guessing himself. It's like, am I good enough to be like the Green Lantern on the Justice League, or blah blah blah? Of course, Guy doesn't do communication like that. So they leave their rings on a diner for a waitress to like wash the rings for them, while they go outside and decide to duke it out. And if Hal beats him, Guy has to leave him alone. And so they, of course, this hick town folk gather around to watch these two dudes scrap it up. Now, I know some might argue like, hey, this is very toxic masculinity and blah blah blah. I argue this is how guys, if all else fails, this is how they typically solve things. I've seen guys who have beef with each other sometimes, not all the times, but I've seen guys, especially back in high school, they end up duking out. If they have beef with each other, especially one is getting picked on by another, they end up duking it out, and days later they end up being like cool with each other. It's just guys, handle things differently. They usually have to brawl it out half the time. And I argue that probably in certain ways that's healthy too. Certain ways. I'm not saying that is like a end all be all resolution with everything, but on certain occasions, people need to get that kind of aggressiveness out, especially guys. We need that, outlet in order to, because that's part of us. Some point in time we kind of lost sight of that. Every once in a while, guys need to duke it out in order to hash out their issues. But someone ended up calling the cops, and they get put in a cell to cool off. But two country hicks end up finding their rings in the diner and take it for themselves and decide to wreak havoc on the town with them. Now, I call cap on this, but of course, it was like around the 80s when this getting to the 90s when this is written, I think. So, like, there was no steadfast rules with these rings, because by today's standards, and it's been that way for at least well over a decade, that not anybody can just wield a ring. They require great will. Now, you can argue, well, maybe these two hicks actually had some decent willpower, but not to the same extent as somebody like Guy or Hal. So when I was reading this, I was like, okay, there's no way these two ignorant dudes will be able to wield these rings effectively, or even be able to spark them up. But then I thought, like, there's plenty of people on Earth. Because Guy had great will. Only reason Hal was the first person that Abin Sur gave their ring to, or at least the ring searched for, because he was closer than Guy. That's why Hal was the first Green Lantern. So it stands to reason that there is over 7 billion people on the planet. There's plethora of people with willpower that the ring will end up choosing. So there's no reason to not to think that these two, if they were around closer than either Guy or Hal, the ring would have chosen them. So you can make the argument. But because they was wreaking havoc so much, the local sheriff decides to try to, call the National Guard or something like that. But Guy and Hal tell them that they know what's going on. Let them out. Trust us. We can handle it. So because they're so intertwined in how the rings work, and since it's theirs, they manipulate the rings, which shows their great will. You think that you need to have the ring on your finger at all times in order to make it work. This proves that if they're close enough, they can manipulate the rings, especially if it's theirs. They can manipulate the rings how they see fit, even though there's not on their finger. They at least have to be in proximity with the doggone things. So they take those rings back from these two dudes and put them in prison for wreaking havoc on the town. And Guy decides to leave Hal alone and go back to the Justice League while Hal continues on his little soul finding mission. All the while, the rogue Guardian, which I think they call Old Timer, is still capturing and snatching up cities from different planets. One such cities on Earth so happens to be where Rose and her son are from. Their slice of the city gets picked up because this Guardian visited their neck of the woods back in the day and remembered fond memories of it. That's why he collected it. And once again, while the Justice League is investigating these mysterious disappearing cities, or at least a city, Guy and Hal started getting distress signals from John Stewart. And he's struggling to try to do so without alerting the Guardian what he's doing, because he's constantly probing his mind. So you can't tip him off, otherwise he will go after Guy and Hal before they can mount a rescue. But it's well too late. It works. So Hal ends up charging his ring and says the oath. I cannot do a Green Lantern comic without at one point doing the oath. And bright as day and black as night. Hold on. Got myself. Of course, these rings are kind of small for my fingers, but and bright as day and black as night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light. Had to do it. This was like a birthday present for myself because I always wanted to have all these rings. Got will, hope, love, rage, avarice, fear, life, death, and compassion. So Hal ends up going to Oa and finds Rose in her town getting and then like a city on if you know about Tamar Ray, this bird-like alien creature that's like a Green Lantern, probably more well-known Green Lantern like Kilowog. His race of people, a slice of their city was snatched up by this rogue Guardian and is sitting right next to this Earth-based town, and they're intermingling. And of course, these people have no understanding about alien language, or they're freaked out. They don't know what these race of beings is. They're on a strange planet. Luckily, there's oxygen, but well, maybe there's a little pocket, of atmosphere for these different types of alien races, so they can be able to breathe or whatever. Don't think too much hard on it, but she gets upset because she's pretty much like a de facto leader of this doggone town, I guess. She gets upset with him, saying like, what's going on? We're pretty much kidnapped, and how stressed, like, okay, we'll figure this out. I'll try to make sure like I get you home right away. But like I know these race of beings, they're good people. Just try to stick together, and we'll figure something out. All the while, while Hal's trying to find John Stewart and deal with this Guardian, there's other, alien race that is native to Oa, like this yellow rock thing. Now, of course, if you remember, back in the day, Green Lanterns are weak to the color yellow. Why is that? Well, a long time ago, the Guardians trapped the embodiment of fear, which happens to be yellow, inside the giant central Green Lantern battery. And because of that, the thing, as like a big FU, caused all Green Lantern rings to be weak to the color yellow. And I say weak as in anything that's yellow or have any shades of yellow to it, the constructs can't affect it. So like here in the panel, throwing yellow rocks at Green Lantern, even if you put up a shield, it'll just pass right through. If you color bullets yellow and try to shoot at a Green Lantern, he can't deflect it. He'll have to evade it, because if he actually see it coming, he has to evade it. Not, but what Green Lantern will think that somebody will paint their bullets yellow. They'll never see that one coming. So that's the kind of thing you have to worry about. That hasn't been a weakness for a very, very long time. But that was a thing. So he has to get past this obstacle. Sorry, I got at least 15 files for slides that I have to make sure I get through because there's a lot, guys. Because they had the mountain rescue mission to get John Stewart out of the clutches of this guardian. So yeah, how alerted guy, he's making his way to Oa. And he's running through some obstacles, that the rogue guardian is tossing at them. They ultimately end up getting captured, but thanks to the return of the guardians, they annihilated this rogue guardian who overstepped his bounds and obligations. And since their return, they want to reestablish. They're trying to reinvent themselves because the Guardians, for a lot of people who are well known with the Green Lantern canon, know that through most of the Green Lantern history, the Guardians seem like just they're old beings, been around since the birth of the universe. They very high and mighty, self-righteous pricks. And of course, every once in a while, the writers keep trying to reinvent these Guardians to be a little bit more compassionate and understanding, and work more, closely with their, Green Lantern Corps. But they end up keep writing them back into this, same old attitude that nobody likes about them. But they want to reestablish the core. And of course, how John and Guy bring up, like, okay, we got to send these cities back to their respective planets. But they want to start reestablishing the core first and get the battery, back up to snuff, to efficiently pass out, easily distribute the Green Lantern power to the core, so that would have enough power once everything gets back up and running. They have enough power to send these different cities back to their respective planets. Even though you're an ancient race of beings, very powerful, you can easily send these things back. Even if you have to do it one at a time, you can just start doing that. Of course, they don't do that because they treat this like, they see this as a good experiment to see how these different race of beings commingle with each other. Whether it ends up good or bad, they want to see how it turns out, which infuriates Hal. And this is where things start piling up with Hal and his disillusionment with the Guardians, and it ultimately end up in a final straw with them. We'll get to that soon. And these patchwork of cities will be known as the Mosaic, which falls in line with the John Stewart comic, where, because we don't know how this ultimately, obviously ultimately they end up getting their cities back on their respective planets, obviously, but the journey to that is in like a John Stewart comic that is like running parallel with this arc. Maybe I'll cover that one day. I'm not sure. So now they got to figure out, okay, we have only 3 Green Lanterns here, and we got different obligations that needs handled. So they are deciding, okay, which of these 3 will do what. So they decide how you will be in charge of recruitment, going to plan finding like worthwhile candidates for to be part of the Corps. John Stewart, you will be here on Oa, making sure these cities, are looked after, and because we need like a competent Green Lantern to make sure things are, because we can't do it ourselves. We got our own little obligations. So he has to pretty much be like the sheriff of all these towns. And while Guy Garner can go back to Earth and protect that. Which, of course, Guy is just elated. He is just like, pants and how, like, nah. He's pretty much the Eric Cartman of the DC universe. Like, ha, 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 la, 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 la. And he kind of dips off. Screw you guys, I'm going home. And he just dips off. So, yeah. So they deal with all these different alien races that was attacking them, while they're ultimately ends up, finishing off that Rogue Guardian. And he ultimately ends up. This is where also where I'm pretty sure the Guardian Ganthet, who's probably the more well-known Guardian that people know by name, at least DC comic fans will know by name. I'm pretty sure he's always been established prior to this, but I think a lot of people got really familiar with him in this arc, because he is very instrumental in Earth-based Green Lanterns. Or at least, has like a good kinship with them because he likes Earth a lot. Yeah, and this guy kept messing with John's mind so much that he pretty much got to get it, like, essentially like, kind of like exercise in a way. So here's when they, start doling out who do what. Of course, like, while back on Earth, Guy is just kind of like, he's being Guy. And it's not like he's a, he's a good guy. He's just an a-hole. He knows what's right from wrong. He just got like his own way of, dealing with it. He has like a moral center, because he used to be like a star quarterback, so he kind of like that, jock kid in high school that, he isn't a bully. He's kind of like a, how do I put it? Because he's not like Biff from Back to the Future. He's the guy you send to go after Biff. He is like he's kind of like that. It's kind of like he's the other popular kid that like strutted stuff, kind of that jock popular kid in school that dances to beat his own drum, but he has a heart, kind of thing. But the Justice League ain't too thrilled by the fact that John is like Guy is the one they're essentially stuck with, because they definitely prefer Hal, but like they get this guy no respect. But why should they? Because he's very abrasive to work with. So he kind of feels like he's playing second fiddle to Hal all the time. Like nobody, I guess he's looking for that kind of respect. He's kind of demanding respect instead of earning the respect kind of thing. Where Hal kind of put in the work and he garners the respect that Guy kind of want to just feels like he just obligated to just automatically. He ends up meeting up with Nort. And if you don't know Nort, he pops up every once in a while in Green Lantern stories. If you watch Batman Brave and the Bold, you will be familiar with Nort because he pops up. Because every once in a while, in terms of alien-based Green Lanterns, Kilowog, Nort, Tamar Ray, or Tamar 2, in terms of, and of course Sinestro, technically, and Abin Sur, they're probably the most well-known alien Green Lanterns that people might know by name, because they show up pretty prominently in Earth-based Green Lantern stories. And they every once in a while they have their own little story. Nor even have his own little short series. It's kind of like a goofy cartoon in a way. He has willpower of his own. However, he's kind of simple-minded, but he has a good heart. But Guy doesn't think like, okay, how's the Guardians gonna let this fool in? And he just wants to hang out with Guy. He has no understanding that Guy's kind of like an a-hole, but he looks up to Guy a lot. And he just want to be such a good boy to Hal. It's kind of like they got like a buddy cop thing going on, where it's like the straight man and a goofy guy, very slapstick. A guy asked him like, like why the Guardians even brought you in, and so Nord comes by to get trained by Guy on Earth and hang out with him a bit. But I don't think like the Guardians even remember recruiting him. Yeah, Nord says like he never really saw them technically. Of course, Guardians don't even recall recruiting Nort before. So since Nort didn't exactly meet these supposed Guardians, they end up going to Nort's home planet, where they meet up with Nort's uncle, who's pretty much like the Jabba the Hutt. Not like a criminal, but he's kind of like a big deal on this planet. So, because he's trying to figure out like the answers to this, because it turns out the uncle also has a Green Lantern ring. I was like, okay, somebody need to tell me what's going on. Who's just passing out Green Lantern rings to these goofballs? Because clearly there's like normally a protocol in place in order for recruitment to go. And there's a unique, there's particular candidates Guardians typically look for in terms of recruitment for particular Green Lanterns or potential Green Lanterns. The Guardians will never, at least in Guy's eyes, will never recruit somebody like Nort, and it does get worse. So he goes to talk with Nort's uncle, who is shady as all hell. And he ends up describing these supposed Guardians. And he goes to talk to Hal about this. It's like, it's like, do you know any alien race that looks like this little weird looking cartoon? It's like Polachi. So Guy goes to investigate because it's like, okay, who are these weirdos making a claim they're Guardians, and how they have the ability to pass out rings? Guy ends up coming into contact with these Quardians, who wields a lot of yellow based weapons. They're from a different dimension, which will later, well, they're called the antimatter universe, which we later will know years down the line that the antimatter universe is where the Justice League crime syndicate comes from, where everything runs on its opposite, while the regular base universe runs on positive matter. That universe runs on matter or negative matter. And also, things run on this kind of like an opposite, or at least in terms of morality. The crime syndicate universe, or Earth 3 most cases, but I always just remember it being Earth 3, where I keep flip-flopping it, but I just stick with Earth 3, where the crime syndicate universe is where the evil Justice League comes from. And while you've seen this from time to time from different like if you watch Justice League movie Crisis on Two Earths, or Batman Brave and the Bold, that two-parter, Enter Owlman or something like that. It's a two-parter where a universe where evil pretty much is the dominant force, where good always lose, where in the standard universe, ultimately good will always have to win. That's just the law of the universe. But there, the law of the universe, evil always has to win. That's just the standard. I will, at some point down the line, do some crime syndicate stuff, because I love the crime syndicate. They're a great rogue for the Justice League, and I really wish we do more with those guys, especially with somebody like Owlman and like Johnny Quick. Hell, like once Superwoman, who's like an evil Wonder Woman that has like a lasso of submission instead of lasso of truth. Very interesting group of people. We should do a lot more with in the comics. And of course, the Green Lanterns of that universe are known as Power Rings, not Green Lantern Corps. And their will are just very shaky. They're just a lot of those, because standard Green Lanterns always have courage, will. They're very steadfast. The Lanterns in the antimatter universe are very, kind of dowdy. Their rings kind of talk with them in like a, always constantly putting them down because it's like an AI in a sense in the rings. They're constantly putting them down, telling them how worthless they are, and blah blah blah. Uh, so I won't say they run on fear, but they kind of very reactionary kind of lanterns. Well, the yellow lanterns are the good guys there, and Sinestro ends up getting like a yellow lantern from that world, or sorry, that universe, and establish like a core, which I want to go at some point go through the Sinestro core comic, where he builds his own core in the standard universe to be an antithesis to the Green Lantern core because they run on fear. And of course, there's a Sinestro in that world, but he's more like a swashbuckling good guy there. So this is a slight little backstory on that kind of thing, in case you're wondering. But these Quardians, who are obsessed with Sinestro, like our standard Sinestro, the evil guy, they end up going after and attacking Nort and Guy. And Guy ends up finding these clowns, literal clowns, who are claiming to be the Guardians. And they're not looking for people with great will. They looking for people who are, looking for like fun or something like that. Just like, just weird, recruitment stuff. Spreading fun and, kind of just laughter and all that stuff. It's kind of just being goofballs. So Guy ends up running into these dopey, oddball, quirky looking alien races. It's like the artist just went what the hell with it and just drew whatever. Doesn't even matter. They, eventually they get, dealt with, but right now, Guy just kind of get caught off guard. Nort tries to help, but they end up getting outnumbered. But in all honesty, Guy should be able to easily deal with these goofballs because they are just like, he only loses because they're kind of outnumbered, despite Nort's help. But honestly, Guy can easily deal with these fools in his sleep. Now, of course, we like to talk crap about Guy, but he is an effective Green Lantern. And these goofballs has only been lanterns, quote unquote, for like 5 goddamn minutes. Should easily knock them aside, make a dozen different constructs and just toss them out into space. It's like, get out of here. But the two end up getting captured, and they end up getting questioned. Yeah, they pretty much like looking for Hal and try to get question Guy about it. Guy is not giving up the goods at all. So he's put into this kind of harness where his power gets siphoned off painfully, especially if he's trying to use his power. And we see that these guys are like very much worship like Sinestro. So much so they actually dress like him. And of course, they threaten Nort's uncle, which Nort not one to, despite his uncle uh, betraying them, he's still his uncle, and he doesn't want his uncle be put to death by these guys. He tells them where Hal Jordan is, where he's stationed in space when he was doing his little recruitment process. Of course, you know, Guy sort of understands, given the fact that, okay, even though he didn't want Nort to say anything, he understands, like, okay, like, that his family is like, it's like, I can't really ultimately fault him for it, but he thinks to himself, okay, like, how will figure this out? Maybe he will figure out this, and then he'll do this, and then he'll do this, and ultimately he ends up doing exactly that, and overloading the harnesses holding him down, is like overloading it, causing it to burst, because, like I said earlier, Guy just beaming with will that the Green Lantern ring practically can't contain that sucker. So he ends up bursting out of his restraints, releasing Nort, and they end up fighting off these Quardians. So they, thanks to Nort, ultimately destroying this giant robotic, monstrosity that's dressed like Sinestro. And because of Nort's heroics, Guy vouched for Nort for the true Guardians, and he at this point became an honorary member of the Green Lantern Corps. So technically, that Nort will be the first new recruit because he showed great bravery and will. But in terms of these, because these Quardians gave out these fake rings to kind of sow distrust throughout the universe to impede on any type of recruitment on the true Green Lantern's behalf. So whittling their numbers to the finite few, so they can just easily overwhelm the Corps altogether and eradicate them, because that was their plan, giving out these fake little rings to these goofballs that just kind of do whatever, which caused like other races in other planets to like, these dudes are corny. It's like, I ain't trying to be a part of this. I don't trust any of them. That's the ultimate plan, which is kind of like a solid plan, giving out fake rings to cornballs that's not going to be a major threat to anybody, but at the same time cause calamity here and there under the guise of it being joyful and fun and whatever, and not really trying to keep the peace at all. It's like, okay, why would I want to join a corps that has members like this? So, well, back on Earth, Kilowog, I guess he was earthbound for a while. He ends up going back to Oa to help out. Didn't know, like, Kilowog had like a good stint on Earth for a minute. I think that was the case, I guess. Because I guess Kilowog still had his Green Lantern powers too. So. And of course, Nort give Guy like a bone as a gift, as like a thank you for vouching for him. Of course, Guy, not known to be like emotional or show his feelings, so he kind of like, dude, what the heck is this? Don't do this. Like, don't give me this. Like, stay away from me. Leave me alone. It's a very straight man, goofy man kind of dynamic. Kind of funny. Now we're going back to Hal, who's doing his recruitment, and we see him recruiting three of them. One of them is this woman named Bricks, who seems very infatuated with Hal in a unnerving kind of way. So he's starting to train the first three recruits of his on how to deal with problems. And of course, you know, like trick them into thinking like, oh, these guys are after me. I wasn't, keep my head on a swivel, but I was trying to test your teamwork and your way of logic, because these guys come from three different races and three different kind of perspectives. They got to be able to work as a unit, use and follow like the rules of the law of a core member, like no killing, work as a team. Of course, also don't hesitate to question. You can of course follow orders, but don't hesitate to question your superior every once in a while, because that keeps them honest. That sort of thing. Because if you, especially if you know what's right from wrong, and if your superior is getting out of line, don't hesitate to step up. It's kind of, they're cops, and it's kind of ironic given like the whole situation like with cops of today, especially after like an incident like George Floyd and all this other stuff. I don't want to just bring that up, but it's kind of thing that you can talk about via the Green Lantern Corps, where it's like, okay, they're space cops. They have rules of the law, and you gotta show that even a superior can be wrong, and the others have to step up and deal with that. They can't let that just fly by. Uh, okay. We're so many different worlds that we need one common ground. Sometimes duty to the Guardians is the only one we can agree on. Uh, yeah, and he's teaching like them also about losses. Lanternhood means suffering losses and bearing your grief in your duty. But I think it makes you hope. It doesn't leave you room for a self-interest, for a self-pity. It forces you to join the world. So he tricked them into thinking he got sneak attacked by this Cordian, but no, he subtly let loose his restraint and like pretend like, oh, he got severely hurt. But of course they wasn't cooperating with each other, but they showed that they can work as a unit under, at the very least, have like the core being their guiding star. They have different ways of handling certain things, but ultimately this is what they can agree on. Okay. Everybody's already letting off fireworks. So moving on to John Stewart, who's pretty much trying to corral, everybody, because there's a couple of different alien races that's kind of wreaking havoc on other cities, like the Earth area, the humans, and two young 20-somethings get killed by a different alien race that functions on emotions, not logic. And This caused like a feud essentially. So while the Guardians is waiting to get everything back up and running, they're allowing things to just go on, like not unmonitored, but they're not doing anything. They're leaving everything on the shoulders of John, who is starting to get like well, eventually start getting like in the uh, grow feelings towards Rose, who clearly was originally smitten with Hal. Kind of like hitting too close to home with the homie. You know what I mean? Uh, I'm pretty sure this goes more in depth in Mosaic. So John is trying to, deal with, because he doesn't want to hurt anybody. They're in like an impossible situation that he's trying to make sure he's trying to keep the peace, but the humans thinking like, oh, he's signed with these aliens. He's supposed to be one of us, and of course, they're scared. They're homesick. They just forcibly been captured. They like it's a lot going on. Emotions are really high, and it's getting the tenser and tenser and tenser to the point where John is going to be barely able to, keep things copacetic. Rose trying to, and a few other humans are trying to keep everything chilled out. Even working with a couple of the Tamara Ray's people. And he's bringing into like the situation to the Guardians because like things are getting heated between these different races. It's like these seeds didn't choose to be here. It was one of you who brought them here. Whether he was crazy or not, they're you're their protectors. It's like, no, we made you their protector. And we told you that we must learn new ways of maintaining the cosmic order. How you and these beings solve these troubles may teach us such new ways. So if every city on Or is eaten by these creatures, then we will learn from that. And I was like, oh, you talking to some experiment? Like, well, yeah. So you can see how people like do not like the Guardians because, to be fair, they like most writers don't write the Guardians to be these noble figures like they're supposed to be. They're very like detached. It's kind of, but I get the point, and it's kind of feeds in ultimately, Hal's grievances with the Guardians, well, a lot of their grievances with the Guardians, but specifically Hal, where they're so detached and withholding secrets and just puppeting every little thing that they do for this vague notion of cosmic order and blah blah blah. It's full of crap. So Hal tries to keep everybody separate, keeping them from like ultimately killing each other. So at the end of the day, he decides to just build walls around every city, wall them off all together. So if they really wanted to like actually attack each other and blah blah blah, they actually got to put in the work and try to get behind these massive walls. And of course, he ultimately had to learn how to, you can't function by, people can't work together if you pull walls around each other, the metaphor kind of thing. But this is the only solution, at least a temporary solution, that John can think up of, since the Guardians can't do diddly squat about this, or won't do diddly squat about this, and he can't constantly intercede in every little conflict that spurs out, because it's only just him right now. So he decides to, okay, for the time being, I'm gonna have to like just put walls around each and every one of these cities to keep them from just randomly attacking each other, because he can't be everywhere. And of course, this is the 80s, and it's ironic like how things don't see. Yeah, let me just read this to you, because better than me just explain it. uh I may not know much about music taste, Mr. Stewart, but I've got an eye for people. Some people just fit in any. Some people just fit in anywhere. Like how everywhere he goes, bosses hire him, girls fall for him, but you're in your own place. You feel like you never fit, don't you? Friends all around you, but always alone. Listen, when I was a kid in Detroit in the '60s, mind you, this is like written in a different time period. Uh, I watched them on TV on the big uh, Naugahyde couch in my parents' living room. I saw people who looked like me burning tenements in my town and saying it was a black issue, but it had nothing to do with me. And I wonder if something was wrong with me. I remember those riots, and of course, it's like the riots after Dr. King got assassinated and everything like that. A little. I remember my mama kept asking, "How come how come they're the only poor people who gets on TV? Because if black people are poor, it's supposed to be white people's fault, and if white people are poor, it's their own fault." And of course, John kind of snaps like, "You don't know what's it's like. White people see your skin, and black people see your clothes. Your white friends want you to say ain't, and your white friends want you to say ain't and talk sassy. Young black men stare you down on the street when they see you with your white friends. And what happens when I say ain't and middle class people think I'm stupid, and poor people who aren't white, they think I'm on the wrong side?" So this is so back and forth. Now, of course, comics have always dealt with social issues. They always dealt with political issues from time to time, especially during like the 4 years after the whole World War II situation. Of course, it's very different from today, because in my opinion, it's okay to talk about certain social issues. It's okay to talk about certain political issues. But the only differences between then and now, in my opinion, is the fact that back in the day, they always left it vague, left it to the reader's own interpretations. They didn't tell you what you should think. They allow you to think for yourself, to get you to think about these kind of things and talk about it. Today's standards, they kind of want to shove every agenda in your face and say like, you should only appreciate black people, especially black women, because that's how you should think, because that's the right thing to think about. Instead of seeing like both sides of the whole situation and let the reader draw their own conclusions. They don't tell you to think left. They don't tell you to think right. They just say like, here is like, both sides, in a healthy debate, you come to your own conclusions. It's kind of like the whole Marvel Civil War. They don't tell you, like, you should only think the way Cap thinks, otherwise you're a bad person kind of situation. Here's Cap's side of things, here's Iron Man's side of things, and here's the whole argument spectrum from different superheroes or different regular people. That's how you normally should do it in these comics. People say, oh, comics are political. Well, the comics always been political. Why are you so upset about it now? And it's like, yes, They've been political. Yes. They talk about social issues. Yes, that part is true. But there's the way you handle how you write it. You don't be finger wagging at the reader, and you don't tell them exactly what you think they need to think like you for. And I think that's the problem when you letting certain people with chips on their shoulders or certain people with agendas or DEI hires or whatever into these writers' rooms, because they'll just write the way that you think they should all think in this perfect harmonies, Zen-like crystals, and black is right and white is wrong, and if you're not a leftist and you don't like people who are trans or all this stuff, you're evil, and that's how you should think. I don't like that written into comics. You can talk about like social issues, sure, but do not tell them the exact thing that you think they should be thinking on either side, because that is like, that's why I made sure I put this slide up, because I really wanted to talk about that part, because that is like an appropriate way to this thing. Because yes, she's a white woman. She doesn't need to bow down to the winds of his black majesty. It's like, yes, you're right. I need to learn. I need to do better, Senator. Like, no, she has, justifications of how she was brought up, because she was raised into this like, low income kind of situation, and people think of a certain way about her. Sure, she doesn't have to deal with like a race component, but she is constantly looked at as like lower class because she comes from kind of like a hick town, and don't think they think other people outside looking in thinking that she's probably like some ignorant hick that doesn't know any better, but probably is more well educated than people might give her credit for. So people go through different struggles. All we gotta do is understand from each perspective. He isn't automatically right because he's black, and his struggle is the most important struggle of all time, above everybody else. I just have to bring that up because this is how you're supposed to do it. This is how you're supposed to do it, people. Not the way most how things are written in the comics these days. As I was going through this, I wanted to do a TikTok video about this, but I figured I'm going to hash it out in a video anyway. I might still do a TikTok video about it, but whatever. So one of the Tamar Ray's people, gets injured by a human. So Green Lantern used his powers to teleport, races that's being monitored by Rose and other good, rational humans. Okay, we don't want them getting inadvertently attacked by these ignorant humans. So I'm going to teleport them to their own people where they can be looked after for the time being. You see how these massive walls all, corralling everybody, which is a shame because he initially didn't want to. He figures like people be rational and working more like a harmony. But then again, you probably should have at least suspected there would be not only scared people and scared other alien races, but they're not going to sit there and be kumbaya. They're scared. They want to go back home. They don't know what the heck is going. Well, they do know what the heck is going on to some degree, but not to the extent the fact that the Guardians are, keeping them there, not indefinitely, but is they not putting haste into getting them home because they don't want. Because John doesn't want to start a mass panic. And of course, there's like gonna be like just like a massive breakout war between these different races. They're using technology in order to get over these walls because they're determined to like just fight each other. Don't know why you don't just work, or at least they don't have to work together, but that the Guardians are primarily the ones responsible. You should be like at the very least riding towards them and not towards each other. And of course, John is still like suffering after effects of mental, probing from that rogue guardian. So now he's kind of got this, his voice in his head is, causing him to doubt and second guess himself. So like a full on fight breaks out between these different cities that John's trying to deal with. So luckily he sends out a help, from Hal and his new recruits to come deal with these different alien races from killing each other. But then John decides, okay, I want to get all the responsible parties from each of these races, round them up, and put them in one single cell. It's like, okay, y'all want to fight so freaking bad? Fight each other in there. Because there's people who actually want to work together in order to broker peace, and you're disrupting that. Okay. Yeah. So, go on the next slide. So yeah. So we'll get more, like, like if you want to read like Green Lantern Mosaic, they get more in depth with what's going on with these cities moving forward. Yeah, Guardians, once again, don't give a lick about any of these cities. They in no hurry to send them back because they're just one big giant experiment for all they care. All right, I'm gonna take a brief intermission while I just get me some kind of snacks going because I am starving. So gonna have some music playing while I just take a pause for the cause for a second. Okay, 1 second. All right. Sorry, had to pick up a snack and get something popping in the oven. So, excuse me. So, all three of these guys are just going through their different like personal issues. Then all of a sudden, each one of them are experiencing images of the technically original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, who at this point in time has been missing, presumed dead. He was part of the Justice Society of America. So they all quickly go back to Earth to meet up with his widow wife. Wife, mind you, because uh, not recently, but some time ago, they essentially retcon Alan Scott to be a closeted homosexual. He ended up having like a wife and a couple of kids. I think the son might end up being gay too. They just giving like labels to every little character they can possibly find just to drum up, you know, new LGBTQ plus breeders and stuff. It's so half-assed and hollow. Um, but Alan Scott's wife, they go and talk with her because, like, hey, your husband's been contacting us. He might be trapped somewhere. And so, guy and John even try to visit Alan's kids to see like they know anything. So, they find his lantern, or at least a message left. Yeah, it says like, "I am needed. I will return. I promise you," to his wife. And that was the last time she heard from him. Until his lantern, for some reason now, has appeared before all three of them to say like he needs to show them something. But I guess his after image spirit or whatever constructing his lantern uh a sense that all three are in like some kind of emotional turmoil that needs some kind of guidance. So he teleports them into the past where you see the origin of the first Earth-based Green Lantern, even well long before Aban Sur. This Yalin Gur, who ironically has the same color palette as Alan Scott, that he inadvertently kind of adopted the similar color scheme for his costume. And he was dealing with like the like ancient Chinese people that was like there was a war going on, and this dude thinking he can just rule over this sector. He's pretty much no different than how Sinestro conducted himself when he was a Green Lantern. The guy pretty much wreaked havoc amongst the people. And the Guardians, who became aware of his, you know, break, like going outside of the bounds of his obligations, decides to pull a fast one on him to kind of teach him a lesson. Where the people had enough of his cruelty, they try to round up a mob. They come in with these like wooden clubs, and so the Guardians remove his defenses against wood. That's why Alan Scott's his weakness is against any wooded objects and not the color yellow. Not sure if that is even a thing anymore in today's comics. And that's because Yalin, his lantern is is what Alan found back in the 30s, and he became like the first Green Lantern, but isn't tied down with the whole Guardians thing. It became over time more mystical because it was buried in the earth as like an ancient relic and was messed around with these different sages. And by the time it got to Alan, it got messed with a couple of times where it's just not even that much associated with the Guardians anymore, and more so tied to some more mythical means. So it was like a blend of the two. And of course, the spirit of Yalin was trapped inside the lantern. But over time, while he was trapped in there, he kind of essentially learned his lesson. After centuries, the lamp fell into the hands of a psychotic. The spirit in the lamp guided the man in giving it this shape, a crude imitation of Yalin's original battery. Then the lamp cured the man's psychosis. The soul of Yalin had made peace with itself. It had repented, and so it gained control of its own power. And then the lantern fell into Alan's hands with its Green Lantern-like power and its weakness to wood. And its mission. It spoke to Alan Scott at a level below words, and it guided him. So through this, each of these lanterns learned through the guidance of Alan Scott, get over their own personal issues. Of course, Guy, isn't one to have this little self-reflection kind of thing, but he put on this act. It was all an act because he didn't want the others following him on this particular mission that he kind of got the idea of, or at least helped to deal with some kind of situation. Anyway, while Hal was dealing with this, he had his new recruits that he trained, albeit kind of a short time, but I guess it was more so making sure they get the ball rolling with getting more recruits. So he trained them, at least in a crash course, enough so they can go out and find recruits of themselves and bring them into Oa, because they're trying to build up a core because there's a lot of sectors that need to be covered. Because normally they wouldn't go through like this kind of teachings this quickly. I'm pretty sure this is usually like a longer training process than this, but desperate times. So, uh, one of them, uh, these new recruits is like Bud- uh, Boudica of Bellatrix. And I got surprised hearing the word Bellatrix after my review of the Harry Potter films recently. And she's just like a big brute of a woman, but has the courage and the will to be a Green Lantern. And then there's this mushroom guy who speaks extremely slowly. I guess time works differently on his planet, and his race kind of gets super patient just to get through a sentence. Please to meet you. And it's like that can get annoying very fast. Then Bricks, that rocky looking woman, was on a search because she found two potential recruits on this similar planet, but from different races that don't like each other. But she went missing, so Hal goes to this planet and find the two potential recruits. One that kind of looks like a black guy mixed with a Native American, and this other rocky looking guy. And the rocky looking guy, seems to question every little thing that Hal is doing, because he's honor bound, and he has like a good sense of duty and morality, but he constantly questions Hal every step of the way. While this guy, what's his name? I'm not gonna be good at names, so I'm not even gonna even retain Kawari. I'm not even gonna freaking remember, but for the sake of the story. So I was like, okay, we need to get both of these recruits, and we need to work together to find Bricks, because she's the one that believed in you guys, and she's missing. So put aside your differences and help me find her, because you two were the last people that she saw. And of course, Kawari, it's like, whatever, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir, whatever you say, Hal. It's just like, whatever Hal suggests, he's, following to the letter. But then they end up getting caught by this weird alien creature named Flicker, who bends space around them, seemingly like he's blinking in and out of existence. He ends up capturing these guys. And they try to mind probe Hal to get insight on the core and I guess their weaknesses. See, like constantly just changing. They get inside his head, and the person's interrogating him, constantly changes sexes, different hairstyles, hair colors. It's like just completely messing with him. And Flicker is just like a hired gun to this alien mob boss looking dude. They even get inside Hal's mind, who feels guilt at the loss of John Stewart's wife. Katma. And he blames himself, so his psyche is blaming himself. But Hal's will is too great. He ultimately breaks free and releases the restraints off Bricks and the two recruits. And we see this uh, other warrior from this military group that Flicker is assisting in this fight against this other uh, group of military soldiers. Because Flicker ends up killing that mob boss because he outlives his kind of usefulness, or at least fulfilling his end of the bargain kind of situation. What is it? I forgot this guy's name. He'll become important. Kiran. Because Kira has like a sense of duty, and he only enters this war because he wants to end it quickly to make sure everything goes so we can establish legit peace. And as far as like these new recruits, Hal ends up choosing the other guy, not Karari, because even though Karari might be questioning Hal, he prefers a person to question authority every once in a while instead of following blindly. That's why I make such an emphasis on how these two guys are acting, because initially might come across kind of like annoying. Hal wasn't saying anything. He was still testing them. Even though they're on some kind of like mission dealing with Flicker and this war going on, they're still on their training day, essentially training day with these guys, and they're being evaluated even through all this. I'm not putting a pause on that. I'm still checking you guys out. I'm just not saying it, because if he had said, they'll do everything in a power to mind their P's and Q's. Now I need you, with your guard down, so I can see how you operate. And since Karari, you fall too blindly, and you don't question, because like clearly I'm not following protocol. You're not calling me out on that, and when we get into the real thick of it, when things do just get this serious, people might die, you might lose your way, whatever. You can't be a Green Lantern. So he's choosing the other guy. Which kind of pisses off Karari. It was like, yeah. Because you nobody likes a blind follower. And Hal ends up discovering that these one of the military soldiers is holding Star Sapphire in suspended animation. Is the Kiron's people. And of course, this is where like Hal kind of like went off books, because he felt obligated to save his girlfriend / enemy. But Kiron's people think like, oh, she can easily win the day for us when we set her loose on the opposing team. But she ultimately does break out and just cause freaking havoc. Kirari gets sent away. Here it goes. I was like, how? What about Quarry's loyalty? And that was his name. That's why I couldn't remember. It was so dumb. It's very random type of names they given these aliens. His name was two ways. I was always doubting you. Brick, we all run into decisions sometimes that we just can't make or can't make right. At least, like me being asked to risk Carol's life, that's when we need somebody to question us. Sometimes we need them to flat out override us. I love to I love to command, but I've learned I can blow it. I've learned when how to give in. When I knew this thing involved Carol, I wanted somebody along who keep an eye on me. I didn't let me down. So yeah, Kari got sent back home, and now Star Sapphire is released and is wreaking havoc on the Armada and attacking the lanterns. And then she's like desperately to, because there's a thin line between love and hate. And Star Sapphire has been well known to walk that line and definitely step over it from time to time when in regards to Hal Jordan. Because at this point in time, well, at least for a good long time, Carol couldn't control the Star Sapphire power of love. And so it bewitched her and took that feeling and corrupted it, and her feelings towards Hal becomes, extremely dangerous and toxic and life threatening, where she's willing to kill her for love. Kill him for love. And Flicker kind of betrays Karen because Karen doesn't want to constantly, get engaged in battle, despite Flicker wanting to keep it going because he's pretty much like a warmonger type of guy. The other Landers eventually show up, and because John Stewart got word that Star Sapphire has shown herself, so he went out of his way, ditched his obligation to go charge and get revenge on Star Sapphire for the death of his wife. But he ends up getting captured, and uh, uh, thanks to Hal's quick thinking, he's managed to get his friend released and stop Flicker, uh, and Karen stopped the whole armada altogether and put it into all this stuff. And how pretty much got through to to John Stewart about this whole situation because he clearly haven't gotten over it, and he hasn't really had time to really sit down and chat with John about this. Uh, yeah, Sapphire made her a little escape, but she will show back up. I think I got the order of the slides mixed up. But yeah. Yeah, he tried to attack like Star Sapphire, but she ended up, pulling like a fast one on John, because John wasn't thinking straight and he got careless. Uh, but no, I got the slides right. But anyway, they end up finding Carol, but thanks to Hal getting through to John, understanding, none of this was Carol's fault. He didn't ask for this, and he gotta let his, pain go. So, Carol's mind, got, overtook Star Sapphire, and she became normal again, at least for the time being. Star Sapphire has remained dormant in her, so Hal sent her back to Earth to be looked after. And Kieran, left his people, so he is recruited to the Green Lantern Corps. God, he showed great will and courage despite everything. So now that Hal's obligations with recruitment is fulfilled, he got like a significant amount of new recruits. The Guardians allow him to, you can return to Earth, but we can't have two Green Lanterns on there, so you and Guy Gardner are going to have to hash that out yourselves. So it leads to a kind of funny moment where Hal comes back to Earth knocking on Gardner's door. It's like, oh hell no! Like, it's like he knew what was up. It's like open this door. Go, give me this door. Going back up there. Like, I'm going back to the Justice League. So you kick rocks, buddy. And of course, Guy ain't trying to hear all that. He wants to be top dog on Earth for the Justice League. He wants to be the Green Lantern. He get, people. Well, he thinks people like him, but he's got this air of superiority. So they decide, okay, we'll decide who goes up and who goes down. So they end up again to a Green Lantern fight. So, unfortunately, their Goofy Bus takes this fight into the freaking city, which by then the Justice League International have to jump in and intervene. It's like, hey, y'all causing destruction, property destruction with y'all fight. Then John Stewart and the other Green Lanterns intervene and tell the other JLI to stay out of this. Telling Superman, this is Green Lantern business. We gotta let them settle it here. We just gonna make sure they don't take it too far where other people might get hurt. But they gotta settle this. So these two end up duking it out. And honestly, it's like a cool fist fight. They just like, okay, no rings. Because clearly, at a certain point, they're just too evenly matched in terms of like conjuring up constructs and stuff like that. So they decide, okay, model fist fight. And it gets kind of like wonky because like, or not wonky, but it's like kind of like, whoa, this is getting kind of serious. Like everybody's just, all these Justice League members was just looking on. Well, these two dudes that they work with each other, that they work with, are just beating the snot out of each other in like a Fight Club type of situation. And Hal tries to do that move where it's always like a meme with Guy Gardner, where he, like Batman was the first one to do it, where he gets knocked out in one punch. And it's a shame that they don't bring that back for Guy Gardner, because here it's like Guy is like, no, not this time, and he like starts decking Hal. And it got me to thinking, okay, at some point in the comics, when Batman tries to slug Guy Garner, sucker punches Batman and be like, that was for that, punch you gave me all those years ago. You thought I forgot? I got you back for that crap. You might have did it at some point in the comics I just wasn't aware of, but for all intents and purposes, people still remember that, Batman punch he gave to Guy. And Guy, doles it right back. I kind of wanted to see that. But ultimately, throughout this brawl between these two lanterns, Guy loses, Hal wins, and he is Earth-based Green Lantern. Or at least he's going to be the main lantern of Earth for the time being. And Guy ends up quitting the Corps. Eventually, he ends up finding a Yellow Lantern ring and becomes his own type of superhero, so he doesn't have to answer to the Guardians or anybody else. He just does his own thing. We'll see that briefly in the coming slides. And this is before the whole Death of Superman situation, mind you, because you saw Superman here. But the backdrop of the Death of Superman will make itself known soon. So Hal pretty much is enjoying life. But, he realizes he wants to own his own air taxi thing. He needs to get a loan to get his own like a airfield and everything like that. But since he's been out of work and off planet for quite some time, it's hard to garner not only the credit but the actual be a viable person to trust with the insurance and all this other stuff. Carol ultimately used secret funds in order to help with the insurance people in order to get the loan that Hal needs to get that air taxi thing, which he ultimately does get. I just thought I'd bring it up here because it'll pop up here and there. I just don't want to constantly have to bring it up, but that's what he wants to do, so he can be his own boss working with Carol. Then we get a brief intermission with dealing with a lot of Green Lantern rogues. One such being its Evil Star, who pretty much is like a more cosmic-based villain, but his powers is drawn from the stars in the galaxy. But since battling with Green Lantern before, I'm pretty sure it's Hal Jordan, he grounded him essentially. He doesn't have the necessary power he needed to, for some reason, get off the planet so he can absorb the stars he needs so he can go back to trying to conquer planets and what have you. He got these little minion stars around him. It's kind of like Cybermen from Dragon Ball Z. He tries to ambush Green Lantern because he realizes Green Lantern energy is a good substitute to recharge his powers. Like halfway through. But Evil Star is really no match for Green Lantern. He will start trying to take hostages. That didn't work. How he's really good. He is the best Green Lantern for a reason. I'm pretty sure when he started out, he was kind of like a noob, but he's been at it for so long. He just like he can do this in his sleep at this point. You can see that once we get to the whole Emerald Twilight part, you can see this like this dude, ain't like, you think like, oh, he just make constructs. He just make boxing gloves. Oh, you know, it's like yeah, like oh, he's weak to yellow. You can't take this guy seriously. You say the same thing about Aquaman until like a competent writer shows off that, like Gerard Jones here shows that no, these guys are the best for a reason. They're part of the Justice League for a reason. These guys are good. And Hal is the best of the best. So, of course, he can, dispatch these criminals and save these people in the exact same time. He didn't. You see these in these panels is effortless. It's like, yeah, boom, done. It's like it means. I don't say it would mean nothing, but it's like he is very competent. He's not some rookie. Something like Bricks or any of these other new recruits might fumble because they don't know how to deal with like an actual villain and rescue hostages because they will probably cave or something like that in order to save the hostages or have to think of other creative ways to deal with this situation. Hal did this in a couple of panels. Of course, Evil Star made his escape and had his henchmen track down his energy trail and steal Hal's lantern so he can utilize it to recharge his powers. It should be efficient enough in order to get him off the planet so he can be amongst the stars to, close enough to, give him that full power, true full power. So they end up whisking the lantern away right before Hal's able to fully charge his ring. Now, mind you, each Green Lantern ring only has like a 24-hour recharge. These things can do a lot. It isn't just creating constructs. You go in depth. Green Lantern rings, just powered by your imagination and will, can do almost anything. Anything you can think of. They can, if you really willed it, it can make a time machine for you if you really wanted to. That's how good it is. But its only weakness is either yellow, which eventually that became non-existent, and relies on your imagination. You don't need to know exactly how a construct works down to its intricate details. Like, I don't know how a Gatling gun works with its internal components. I know what a Gatling gun is, and it'll just think up the rest, and it'll work just the same. Similar to how, I want to construct giant loudspeakers. I don't need to know the ins and outs of how a loudspeaker inner mechanism looks like, but I know what it is, and the ring fills in the rest. So, it can do the rings. I think a lot of the different lantern rings can do the exact same thing. The only drawback is either your lack of willpower, lack of love, lack of fear, lack of rage, whatever that is that fuels these things in order to get the job done. However, they still technically kept the whole color scheme, which I do appreciate, that affects each of the rings in different ways. Because it kind of makes sense if you think about it. Even though the lanterns are not exactly weak against yellow anymore, it's still like a major drawback because it's more so not only emotional side of the thing, more so the color. Fear is the weakness of the lanterns because if you're afraid, think about it in realism terms. If you're afraid, you don't have the will to combat things a lot. You shrink into yourself. Makes sense. Rage is a good, adversary to fear because if you're pissed off, fear is non-existent in your mind. Hope boosts your willpower. If you feel hope, you can feel like you can do anything, which kind of heightens the will. So I like all that. I'm pretty sure they go in more in depth with it if you look it up online, but I really like that idea that each of these different lantern rings, given what they're powered by, can either influence or hinder another lantern ring based off the emotional spectrum. I always like that, and I really, want them to really lean into that kind of stuff. So anyway, and of course, there's also weakness is the fact that they gotta charge these things because they only have like a 24-hour power charge. So every day, these different lanterns have to charge their rings every day in order to be able to utilize it for the 24-hour time span. So before Hal's have the time to charge his ring, the star minions takes away his lantern ring. So Hal doesn't have enough power to fully go after it. So he only has enough power to do one thing and leave like a trail so he can find it later. So he falls and decides like to deal with this on foot, which shows that the ring doesn't make the man makes the ring kind of situation, similar to how like any weapon. And Hal shows that it's kind of like with Tony Stark. If you nothing without the suit, you don't deserve it. This shows that Hal is an efficient superhero even without his tool. He ends up utilizing one of his own aircrafts or a aircraft, to follow the trail to where the lantern ended up. And of course, Evil Star ends up fighting the other little second-rate criminals that are Green Lantern rogues. In order to, they're fighting over the freaking lantern. But Hal shows up, get his freaking lantern back, and fighting off Evil Star. The other villains end up getting away, but Hal deals with Evil Star once and for all. Oh yeah, Hal's getting like a call from the Justice League about Olivia Reynolds, who's I guess an important person in Hal's life back in the day, but less so in recent comics. This is the first time I've ever heard of this Olivia Reynolds before, but she's pretty much trying to pitch she's trying to hawk this Green Lantern action figure set or something like that. It's the whole entire thing is kind of pointless and useless. Doesn't mean anything. She shows up a couple more times in this arc. And of course, she doesn't know Hal is Green Lantern, but he doesn't like the idea of her, even though he's a superhero with a secret identity, he can't really do anything about her trying to sell this merchandise but ultimately he ends up kind of messing with it, so it doesn't say what she programmed it to say. He had it, you know, say very inappropriate things, so that like, okay, since I can't legally stop you because I have a secret identity, and I don't want to get it out there, and that's the only other way I can stop you from peddling this stuff under my image. However, I can like mess with your stuff, so that way they will never be brought to merchandise. Nobody will want to buy it off of you. That's ultimately what happens. Like I said, I don't really care for this character. Kind of pointless of a character. Just showing off that Hal had, he's a kind of a player. He got like at least a couple of baddies underneath his belt. He ends up helping out with Justice League of Europe with like some tasks here and there, and Gorilla Grodd ends up breaking out. And is Wally West teaming up with Hal Jordan, teaming up with this organization that works with high intelligent animals that can speak or use some kind of psychic powers. Because we get another Green Lantern villain, Hammond, who has like a big brain, he's kind of like MODOK, but without the massive apparatus that holds up his giant head. He just has a chair, but he ends up teaming up with Gorilla Grodd in order to find the space rock that there's another space rock that was part of the space rock that caused them to have their hyper intelligence in the first place. So they easily get taken down for the temporarily, while Grodd and Hammond go searching for that rock. And you see the rock end up mutating the wildlife nearby. Now this continues on a different Flash story, so I just thought I'd briefly mention that because we get Green Lantern teaming up with different heroes throughout this little arc here. Ultimately, Grodd betrays Hammond, steals his massive intelligence, and he becomes like a Hammond Grodd type. And while because the rock exploded and turned Hal into like a Neanderthal, devolved him and hyper evolved Flash, where he doesn't have connection to his super speed anymore, although his intelligence increased massively. Like I said, this continues on in like a Flash story, so as I briefly mentioned it here. All the while, this other former Green Lantern, Arissa, I think, who's mentally withdrew back into like a 13-year-old self. She was young, but something caused her body to age into an adult, but her mind is still that of like a 13-year-old, basically. And she's on a search for Hal Jordan. He ultimately does find her, and he has to pretty much try to take care of her, uh, because he felt obligated because I think technically is associated with the Lanterns. Yeah, she wasn't associated. She was associated with the Lanterns. She ultimately get set back straight. I started to mention it here and now because once again, I'm pretty sure they're trying to hash out certain loose ends in different Green Lantern stories, and they're trying to pseudo wrap it up here. I started to mention it. So he goes, finds her, and leaves her in the care of some friends that know Hal is Green Lantern. So yeah, he leaves her with the Justice League. Well, he finds out that his friend, who's from the Eskimo type of community, he calls him Pie Face. Now, they do address it where I'm not sure where that nickname comes from, but he shows what his real name is, but Pie Face, says to Hal, like, look, I learned a long time ago not to let certain things get to me, certain words get to me. Only thing I will focus on, pretty much is like, what's the intent behind the words. So I'm not going to trip over it, because I know that this is an endearing name that you have for me. This is pretty much just a basic nickname. So I'm not going to trip. Which more people will, think about this, where instead of letting things bother them so much, especially when you go to a comedy show and people making jokes and stuff like that, and not be so goddamn sensitive about stuff. This is in an era where, like, I wish we get back to, where it's like nobody's got to trip over every little thing. Sometimes there's no ill intent behind certain words. God, I miss that. Now everybody gotta be PC, and it's like, culturally understanding and blah blah blah. It's like they overdoing it, in my opinion. But Hal ends up wrestling with his friends from this dark mass entity called the Entropy, that ultimately ends up going back to Oa, because it's some kind of former enemy of the Guardians. Which once again pisses off Hal. The new Guardians have been attacked. The Chosen apparently taken the entire island. Well, some use action when we must. Someone's threatening the core, talking about the third law. Do you know who? We know what we must know, and we will call you when we need you. So it's kind of like keeping secrets once again, which pisses off Hal, because it's like, okay, leaving the core in the dark, and we getting caught with our pants down, and lives are on the line. So he ends up going to Oa. It's like, F this. I'm not waiting on shit. He goes back to Oa and starts questioning them of everything they've been doing so far, ever since the whole cities got snatched up. Do you remember the Chosen and the new Guardians? Remember the beings you created when you left this dimension and then abandoned? They were engulfed by things of pure darkness called enterprise. I fought them. I lost. I didn't know anything about them. Although they said you knew they were coming. What did you do after your failure to stop the enterprise? That doesn't matter. You asked me to serve you, then give me answers. Why didn't you mention the anthropoids or enterprise or whatever, anthropoids? Why do you give us contradictory stories about our rings and powers? Why won't you send the Mosaic cities home? We made our secret deal. I used the prestige of the course to keep 40 worlds silent while you toy with those cities. It's our place to question and yours to answer, Hal Jordan. Again, what did you do after your failure to stop the anthropoids? The lightless orbs that grew from the anthropoids lifted from the water, carrying the entire surface of Kurov's island and chosen and the new guardians inside it. So yeah, you see like the these guardians is like do not give a other than Ganthet, do not give a crap. You have to leave all those people in the care of Carol, which kind of puts her in an awkward position, but she helped out. And these floating head a-holes, it's like, but the old timer fought you. We killed him. You guided John and me into gilded John and me into killing. It was John and Hal and Guy who ended up killing like the old timer, not the Guardians. No one would plan that. You have a religious figure on your world called the Christ. In your stories, he knew from the beginning in which of his followers would betray him. Yet he recruited his betrayer and announced to his followers that one would betray him. Is it I? Asked Judas. You have said, replied your Christ. And Judas betrayed, and Christ's work was done. And Judas killed himself. Now we ask you, was that a prophecy or an assignment? The wise revealed, we must be revealed. And the anthropoids end up showing up on Oa. And this is like the smugness on these bastards. And it's no wonder how they ended up. And it's perfectly set up by Jones because it makes you hate these suckers so much, where when they get to come up as you really do not give a crap what happens. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Don't know why it's I don't know why I sung that. So the anthropoids ends up showing up in a giant like mech looking thing. And they believe in like the third law, where it's like ultimately life is meaningless kind of, thing. While the Guardians, believe in like preserving life and all this other stuff, but keeping secrets. While entropy ultimate goal is to, the end of everything, but truth is revealed kind of situation. So it's kind of like a, one way or another caught between two, opposing ideologies and trying to recruit these Lanterns into believing Enterprise beliefs. But at the end, the Lanterns end up like, look, we don't like the Guardians, but we're not doing this for the Guardians. We're going to be doing it for the core and what the core stands for. So they end up duking it out with the Imperatories. But Hal comes to realize once they attack, they can't attack in a normal way. Hal decides like, okay, I gotta get inside its head and deal with it in a unique way. When you attack the anthropoids, they end up stealing years off your life. Essentially, the Guardians won't intervene and attack them directly themselves, even though they're, not technically immortal, but they have like just billions upon billions of just years of their life, and they won't attack the thing directly because they'll, take away some of that life. And this pisses off Hal because, and John is like, what the hell? It's like, so you want us to sacrifice our short, limited lifespans for the greater whole of the Corps, or for the sake of the Guardians, but you won't fight this particular battle yourself because you, in your warped cosmic, planned out strategy, like, playing 3D chess, where it's like your end is all that matters because you have to get to the end goal, and you can't sacrifice what little life, there's a few years off your billions of life years in order to stop this thing. Because, as you put it, their lives, are limited. They can, you can afford to shed some years, and still wouldn't matter by the greater scheme of things, but you won't do it because you're just selfish. So, Hal gets inside the Enterprise head. Because the Enterprise was another former Guardian, something that the Guardians are trying to keep secret from the Corps. So it's not even just with the old timer that went mad. Now they got the Enterprise, who was a former Guardian long ago, that now grew into this monstrosity. So all this stuff is coming back home to roost, that they expect the Lantern to just follow blindly and deal with it and sacrifice himself if need be. So Gambit is the only one that kind of tells them the truth about the whole shedding their years of life, and that's what the Guardians plan. And the Anthropoid trying to crush the giant central powder battery, but the Corps ends up taking on this sucker despite everything, and Hal ends up getting inside this psyche and pretty much blew it up, releasing whatever the Anthropoid collected, the people that it collected. So Hal ends up going back to Earth, getting everything situated on his aircraft taxi area. He tries to enjoy like a football game with Pie Face, but here comes Guy Gardner with this kind of model bimbo while he's using the Yellow Lantern ring to be his own little superhero. They're trying to enjoy like a football game, and of course, they're rooting for opposing teams. But then this demonic creature ends up kind of like trying to take over bits and pieces of people, and getting the crowd riled up to allow this demonic dragon to release into the earthly plane. But it all ends up tits up when, because it came too early, or at least premature celebration, the game wasn't officially called. So they ended up getting brought back into his demonic dimension. Ultimately, it's like, once again, it's like this little short little blip just really didn't mean nothing. It's cool artistic drawing though. Hal tried to intervene just to keep like one side from winning, because that's what these demons was counting on. And of course, they keep possessing random people just to keep Hal from interfering. But like I said, his ultimate doesn't really matter. Okay. If you excuse me, I have got to check on my food in the oven. So I'm gonna put you on another brief pause for the cause. Okay. Okay. So we get another team up with Hal Jordan with Adam Strange, because Hal and Olivia, got messed with by this other alien entity who's looking for this power source that ultimately is in Adam Strange's kid, this toddler child, and try to try to possess Hal in order to capture the kid, Adam Strange, and Hal gets this little fight going on. But kind of regales like how this get into place, because she, trying to she rented out Hal's aircraft taxi thing to take her to some place. They end up getting captured and brought to the planet where Adam Strange is via Zeta beams. I think it was the Zeta beam thing that always teleports Adam Strange to this alien world for temporarily, and then it kind of randomly takes them back to Earth. It's kind of like what's it? Oh, God, that old Flash Gordon. It's kind of like Flash Gordon in a way. I think it's kind of like took inspiration from Flash Gordon. So they team up in order to save the child and stop this creature that's possessing Olivia. Another Cordian situation. So this I think is a U something with a U that is this benevolent entity possessing the kid in order to get because it's supposed to be helping for this alien race. Like, honestly, I could not care less because it wasn't really that interesting to me. But this thing took possession of the this benevolent creature took possession of the child and fought off this possessed Olivia. How in the midst of this ends up getting captured, and this machine kind of bring up all these old experiences and feelings, because this is long after the iconic team up between Green Lantern and Green Arrow, where these opposing ideologies between Green Arrow, who's more so like a Democrat kind of belief system, as opposed to Hal Jordan, who's kind of like, I don't even want to use the word Republican or anything like that, but he follows the rules of the law and like justice and it is things are black and white, and Green Arrow shows us like there's shades of grays out there, that not everything is just like that simple, and it also leads in the most iconic thing in DC Comics is where Green Arrow's sidekick Speedy gets hopped on heroin, and that also drums up the conversation and addresses during that time the drug epidemic that went on around that time. So I thought I'd bring it up here because at some point I'll talk about that Green Arrow and how Green Arrow and Green Lantern team up thing at some point in the future. But those old monsters keeps creeping back up, and we do eventually resolve that matter thanks to this, the help of the spirit of the kid's mother trying to relegate the kid's power. So all that stuff ultimately gets resolved, pretty much. Then while back on Earth, Barry Allen is back after long since being dead, but now he's back on Earth for some reason, causing problems. And this Dark Star, this other space cop thing, which has also been part of the Green Lantern Rogues. One of these space cops comes after Barry Allen, and of course, for some reason, Barry Allen's acting kind of maliciously. While that's carrying on, Hal's also trying to worrying about Carol, because what he's worrying that the other shoe is going to drop with Star Sapphire ruining her head at some point and causing havoc, and he's constantly having to keep that eye on the ball with that. But Hal is got to deal with Barry Allen. He's trying to say like, hey Barry, what's going on? Because at this point in time, nobody knows where Wally West is, who's been like the main Flash for a long time. This is long before the repopularization of Barry Allen, thanks to the Flash CW TV show. Because prior to that show, we all have for the longest time been used to what Wally West being the main Flash. Now it's kind of like a pull. They pull a reverse move in a unique way that I did not see coming. Where because when the Flash TV show first came out, I was like, the guy that died. Why we gotta talk about that guy? Because I grew up with Wally West. But now, thanks to the Flash TV show and Grant Gustin's portrayal of that character, there's more love for Barry Allen now, more than ever. And Wally West in the comics, kind of lost, at least for me, kind of lost a bit of his luster. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's kind of like, it could have been better. Because he's not like the Wally West that like I'm used to when it comes to like Justice League Unlimited or something like that. Kind of like a shadow of his former self kind of thing, where he's kind of like there's moments where he's very self-serious, and then there's other times when he's back to being that charming goofball, and it's kind of like they lost the box that they had Wally West in that was fit for him. They never. It seems like they don't know what to do with him anymore. But anyway, Hal is struggling trying to deal with Barry Allen because he's a lot more powerful than Wally West. And he's even able to phase through things where Hal is unfamiliar with at that time. They fight in the Flash Museum, and Barry utilizes all of his rogue's weapons in rapid succession to attack Hal. Mr. Element, Mirror Master, Heatwave, Pied Piper, Captain Cold, Captain Boomerang, all these weapons, even the top, all working in concert to overwhelm Hal. And it's kind of disrupting his gameplay because he needs concentration in order to formulate his constructs. And it's kind of like, okay, I need a moment to think. Okay. We're nearly done here. Darkstar eventually shows back up. Right when Hal was about to finally subdue Barry Allen, because he doesn't know what the heck's going on with Barry and why he's acting like this. I suspect it has something to do with maybe Reverse Flash, possibly. I feel like it's got something to do with that. I'm not sure, because he seems like a very Reverse Flash, Eobard Thawne kind of attitude. But Darkstar's intervention causes such big destruction. It seems that Barry might be dead again, or he disappeared. So Darkstar dips off, and Hal will try to follow back up. Of course, Barry Allen is not dead, but this will continue on in a Flash story moving forward. So now, back to Carol, who's possessed by... There's always these different possessions with Carol. This character, the Predator. Not like the Predator, the Yautja. This other... He kind of looks like Nighthawk, in a way. But, honestly, God, it is so... don't even know what this character is. I've never seen him before. It's probably only had a brief stint in the 80s and maybe early 90s, and that is probably it. So uninteresting, and some other manifestations of Carol's psyche, whatever, that Hal has to deal with. But then he ends up possessing Arissa, and they end up fighting with. She ends up possessed and fighting with Hal because she's like in need of Hal's help. She's like kind of just a childlike mentality that she's only trust Hal. And it turns out, like, once again, like, Carol was possessed by Eclipso that also didn't realize she was also possessed by this predator guy, and it's like, it's too much. I don't know what the heck is going on. This girl's body is being used by 3 different entities. It couldn't just been like the Star Sapphire and be done with it. Super overcomplicated. Hal's dealing with Predator trying to get him to release Arissa. All the while, Deathstroke shows up because he's hired to capture and bring in Carol Ferris, sorry. By this unknown benefactor. So now Hal's not only got to deal with possess Arissa, but now Deathstroke took away his, well, not even girlfriend. They're like just friends now. Which is a whole nother set of, emotional drama. But this is where, thanks to Arissa's will, she managed to unpossess herself, destroy the predator entity, and then reclaim her mental stability and all this other stuff. But then after fending off Deathstroke, turns out Star Sapphire, because she got reawakened and helped fight off everybody. She's also pregnant by the predator. That's why he's fought so hard to get back to her, because mentally, for some weird reason, impregnated her. But when she goes back to being Carol Danvers, no longer pregnant, is all in her head. Stupid as hell. Overly complicated. And we got this thing with this other alien entity and this other group of soldiers that's trying to take away the power battery so they can fend off this entity and its mates, keeping them from birthing these things that look like Starros for some reason, but not Starros. But then during the on-scene fight, Hal's battery gets destroyed and Hal has to absorb it, but he has to release it somewhere. He has to go into space, but there's an armada up in there fighting that his alien friend. So he uses that power to, like, in a massive way in order to fend off the armada, but they blast him back down to Earth. But yeah, so which results with that getting released, I guess. So the wife ended up, given the responsibility of looking after her infants that won't cause any harm for, like, at least won't cause any harm and won't grow up for another billion years. So they very kind of passive, but ultimately it doesn't really freaking matter. It's stupid. The entire thing is incredibly just whatever. By the end of all this, I gotta give my true opinions on the lead up to Emerald Twilight. Then next adventure, Hal's on this other planet dealing with these pseudo gods and these two warring factions. One of them being the worshiper of these guys, who's waiting for them to cleanse their planet, pretty much try to pull a Thanos and wipe out most of the population as per their doctrine and what they're expecting. While these other soldiers called the Legion trying to deal with these entities and kill anybody in their way, whatever. And Green Lantern is caught in the middle. All the while, like Pieface is like questioning Carol because he's been studying the financial books of the airstrip, is wondering, it's like, okay, there's two people that got kidnapped after I asked them to look into this the where the money came from to fund the insurance thing, and I wonder what you know about this, because the subsidiary or whatever is connected to Ferris, the Ferris name. And of course, she doesn't want to give up like the source, which ultimately is her family. Hal's dealing with these would-be gods that keeps trying to alter him by trying to force him to worship him or change him into what he probably despises the most, which is like looking like one of the Guardians. But thanks to his unbridled will, he kind of wills himself back to normal. This dude's willpower is probably like the best, probably even I argue better than Batman. But then Lobo shows up, who's been hired by the Legion to stop Hal. But then other Green Lantern shows up, and then there's like a moment between that chick from Bellatrix and Lobo, who are just trash talking to each other and just two big potty mouths, and end up hooking up anyway. Ultimately, the Lanterns put a stop to all this little mess. All the while that is carrying on, Coast City gets destroyed. Carol luckily isn't in Coast City at the time, but it's because of Mongol is responsible, bringing World to Earth and causing the utter destruction. All the while in the backdrop is during the time of like the reign of the Superman. Superman's dead, and of course, he's starting to, he was in like a healing coma, comes back to life, trying to use the black suit to slowly but surely power himself up. Is a whole thing. We'll get to that soon. But how, after dealing with all this, we'll later find out pretty quickly. I wonder if, because Lobo has a daughter, and I wonder if this woman is the mother. I'm just curious. Who's the mother of that woman? And of course, DC has Lobo's daughter be some kind of butch, lesbian. Xiomara Rojas. Crush is her code name. Like, ugh. Well, she has a foster mother who looks like a Earth woman. Um. Oh, Boudica. They really changed up her look over the years. Cause she's more thin and got a very she kind of looks like the alien from Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull now, as opposed to actual humanoid looking female. It's kind of like a bruiser. Wow, no, like she's more recognizable because I did from time to time see what she looked like in the comics here and there as what is being seen or at least depicted here from what I'm looking up as. Oh, that's her. I guess they had to slim her down to make her more like a feminine, sleek look, rather than this woman with the overdone muscles. I wish they could at least kept her with a humanoid face. Anyway, yeah, they changed a lot with that character. But after they done with that whole spiel, Mongo is fighting Superman, who has recently came back to life, and Hal is vehemently pissed. His entire hometown was obliterated thanks to Mongol. So he's fighting Mongo, who's already tough enough to take on Superman, but that means nothing to Hal. He's trying to take down the sucker as quickly as possible. But in the ensuing fight, he ends up hurting his leg and get like a broken arm. But he just ended up generating a suit and just takes down that sucker once and for all. And while Superman deals with Cyborg Superman. So once that whole ordeal is done and Mongo's put into this prison called the Slab, Hal is just left with the broken pieces of his home. Now we get into the real thick of it when it comes to Emerald Twilight. Brief intermission. I'm sorry, I forgot. There's the situation. We find out who was backing Carol with her financing the air taxi thing. Turns out it's some kind of robotic father thing, and the mother is alive. Both thought dead. Father still technically dead, but was looking after the mom, who turns to be alive, who was going through some stuff. But then Flicker shows back up, is the one responsible for the kidnappings. Don't know. The whole entire thing seems very murky, but Green Arrow was looking into it. He gets kidnapped because, of course, Ollie is ill-equipped to deal with this alien who can just, go in and out of space. But Hal shows up and they deal with the robot dad thing. Of course, Hal and Ollie work together to deal with the situation. And Ollie, and of course, Olivia's back again, and was also kidnapped for stupid reason, trying to still sell stupid action figures. Which, so one who is like a toy Sinestro seemingly is possessed possibly by Sinestro. It's like a subtle hint of his return, even though he's supposed to be locked up inside the central powder battery by the Owens or the Guardians or whatever. We see like a moment with Ollie where he recognizes that Hal's definitely changed since their last little team up thing. You're not this whole black and white straight lace cop anymore. Something's changed. Like, your will has shaken by reality, bud. You didn't know how to hold yourself together after I made you face the emotions you were denying. Whatever strength you found now is coming from inside you. Maybe so. But then it doesn't matter, does it? I was what I was. I am what I am. It's all a part of letting go of the past. I broke things off with Carol recently. Yeah, Dinah just let me go. Guess you and me are both starting new chapters. So, Nana tricking the robot into, or at least Flicker into attacking Carol, and or at least dodging one of Green Arrow's moves. Green Arrow made the arrow pass right through Carol, which kind of caused the robots to fire at Flicker, causing Flicker to just run away, and the real mastermind was the mom come out of hiding and then working with Carol and figure things out between them two, whatever. The entire thing is so pointless. But now we get into the whole meat of Emerald Twilight, where Hal is in the crater of what used to be the city, where he uses his powers to conjure up a construct of his father. His father's, pretty much someone like, you were worthless, and you probably should have done better, which is pretty much his own self-doubt talking through the construct. But Hal's he's on a mental breakdown at this point. All this is pretty much leading up to this breaking point. He conjured up his mom, trying to console him, but then this dude pretty much completely lost it and tried to conjure up the entire city. Everything is all honky-dory, like some freaking Pleasantville stuff, but for Coast City. He even talks with his old, high school girlfriend that you probably haven't talked to in so many years. And then it's like the green construct is evaporated because the battery power has ran out. And says he didn't get a new battery this whole entire time. That part is very confusing too. It's like, okay, your lantern got exploded. Did you get a new replacement? What's up with that? But it's out of power now. And of course, one of the Guardians tell him, you need to come back to Oa. You have misused your power for personal gain. Which, it's like, what you quantify as personal gain? He just made a construct of a city. So, but he then decides, okay, I'll recharge by using you as a construct to recharge my power. And you want me to come back to Oa? Oh, I'll come back to Oa, but you're not going to allow me when I get there. So Hal is just infuriated because the Guardians, with all that power, did not intervene in something as big as this. You're omniscient and all this, with big cosmic power, and you couldn't intervene on things like this Like, where were you guys when my city was being destroyed? Uh, uh, so he's making his way to Oa, and they end up sending Guardians to. They end up sending different core members to intercede and take Hal's ring and bring him back to Oa for a tribunal. But as I stated early on, for a reason, Hal is one of the best, and most of these people he recruited himself. He beats them all up, brutally hurts them. He ended up cutting off the hand of Brodica, and he ended up taking all their rings, giving them enough power to make themselves fly home. Otherwise, they'll eventually suffocate in space. So he just catching rings like he's in the Super Bowl. So he just like mollywops everybody. Even Tamar Ray knocks him out. Takes Bellatrix's ring. Even though he tells them all to back off, he ain't trying to deal with you guys. He's looking for the Guardians. And of course, they're following orders to like bring him in. They're woefully ill-equipped to deal with him. Don't know why they can all just jump him, knowing how good he is. Matter of fact, don't know where Jon Stewart is in all this. He's probably dealing with this whole Mosaic thing or some other adventure, but it's like, it's crazy. You would think he will be more equipped to take on Hal, because you can't rely on Guy Gardner because he's wearing a Yellow Lantern ring at this point in time and has no contact with the Guardians. But they could easily send a construct to go get Guy Gardner to come help out with the situation. They send Kilowog, but Hal, despite Kilowog being like an amazing Green Lantern, is still taken down by Hal. Things are getting like really ramped up at this point. So we're on the last file of slides here. Hold on. What the? Sorry, 1 second. Am I tripping? That was weird. All right. Kilowog, ends up coming back though. But the Guardians got so desperate, they end up releasing Sinestro from his imprisonment, give him a ring because they figured like he's probably the only one actually that gave Hal his run for his money. So they released this well-known villain to go deal with Hal Jordan, and these two end up getting like a massive fight. Hal dropped all the extra rings and just go ring to ring with Sinestro. And the fight gets serious. These two just go at it with each other. And there's this funny moment with Sinestro where he points out to how it's like, uh, uh, it's telling about some kind of story. It's like, hey, there's a story about like, hey, uh, crap, I forgot. I should have put it on the slide. It's pretty much like a story how, like, there was this like good Green Lantern, and then who was on the best of the best, but then here comes it all ended in failure, and that's Hal Jordan kind of situation. I kind of butchered that, but I thought I had it in a slide. But ultimately, Hal beats Sinestro and breaks his neck and kills Sinestro. But here's the kicker: that's not really Sinestro. That is a puppeted construct, given to given to Sinestro by the by Parallax, who at this point is festering inside Hal Jordan's mind. That trying to really sell it, because ultimately Sinestro comes back. But it really fools Hal that he actually took not only took Sinestro's life, proving that how the mighty have fallen, but then Kilowog shows back up, and then Hal, despite his Kilowog's pleas to stop all this, Hal obliterated his closest Green Lantern friend, his core member that he worked with for years, gone on so many adventures. He annihilated him into a green husk of bones. He ended up taking off his ring and then going inside the power battery to get the power he needs to bring, because he just want to bring everything back. The Green Lanterns have the power to do so. I need the power. So he ends up going inside the power battery and ends up turning into, this is probably one of the raddest looking the dopest looking Green Lantern costumes of all time. One of the best looking ones. Ultimately, he will end up turning into Parallax and making his way back to Earth. The Guardians end up dying while Hal is absorbing all that power, giving all the power to Ganthet, trusting in Ganthet to, since the battery is ultimately destroyed and it cannot distribute more rings, because since Kilowog mentions to Hal, it's like, if you destroy the power battery and absorb all the power, all those lanterns who out there fighting whatever war or probably flying through space right now, they ultimately is gonna, you put their lives at risk. Hal at this point cannot give less of a F, because he is so bereaved at this point and angry. It's just like, it's irrelevant to him. So now Ganthet, utilizing all the power that was given to him by all the other Guardians who sacrificed themselves to give him that extra power, to create this unique, one of a kind ring that isn't susceptible to the color yellow, because Parallax is pretty much out of the battery now, because thanks to possessing Hal Jordan, he's released, so that effect of weak to yellow is non-existent anymore, especially now that this whole brand new ring that isn't susceptible to that. Ganthet, who likes humans, decides to go to Earth to try to find anybody that he feels like, okay, we need to stop Hal Jordan. We pretty much release a monster into the universe at this point of our own making. Geth is one of the best of them, so it was his charge to find somebody, which ultimately ends up to be Kal Rayner. And he just says, like, he just blips onto Earth, found the first person he laid eyes on, and it was Kal Rayner. And he was like the famous, I don't know how famous it is, but if you know the story, that is kind of an iconic line, like, you'll do. And he gives Kal Rayner the lantern ring and just disappears. And this is the introduction of Kal Rayner, who in the next comic book review I'll be talking about him, and then it will coincide with his fight with Parallax and also meeting other Justice League members. And that is pretty much the rise and fall of Hal Jordan. And I've been wanting to talk about this a long time, but I didn't realize how short this little story was. I would have stick to those 4 issues. I've been over in like probably 20 minutes. But I wanted to talk about the lead up to that. And honestly, there's moments about it that I like that leads up to it, but it's also useless filler too. I think this is one of those things that could easily be rebooted and more told in a tighter way, where as I read through this, I can't help but think about Anakin Skywalker with Hal Jordan, where the Guardians pretty much not too dissimilar to what's going on with the Jedi Council, where they became complacent or just not listening and understanding is their way or the highway, their smugness, all that other stuff. I think Gerard Jones could have told it in a little bit more tighter way, where it just kind of stuck to Hal Jordan and recruiting heroes and learning about, like teaching them how the ways of the lanterns, but also little by little the struggle with the Guardians gets builder. It builds upon it and builds upon, ignoring this whole useless filler about the well, you can still talk about the entropies and one another Guardian secrets that they kept for everybody, but there's useless fillers like the Adam Strange and the Olivia Reynolds, and there are certain things that like I do not care about. Evil Star, that could have been dropped out and just told in a more tighter way. This could have been at least 25 issues instead of the 50, where it just focused on Hal and the struggles of being a Green Lantern, his job, and being left in the dark, and all the Guardian secrets are just coming back and biting him in the butt because of his association with them. And then him getting just more frustrated. And kind of like Anakin Skywalker, it's pretty much like this exact same thing. I really wanted that to just... That's my biggest complaint. This should have been a tighter story and dropped this useless filler. Great art. There's a lot of great cover arts here. But yeah, that is just my thoughts. I mean, good story in general, but it could have been told in an entirely concise way. So yeah, the next comic book review will be going into Kal Rayner's origin and his adventures of learning how to be a Green Lantern, and the origin of the term fridging. We'll go talking about that, and his fight against Parallax. But anyway, that is Green Lantern. It's been a while since I told a good, solid Green Lantern story, and I'm on a roll, so I'll just work on reading through Kal Rayner stuff, which shouldn't take this long either, but I'm still busy with other personal stuff, some personal business, so when I get done with that, I'll immediately start talking about it. But let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think about Emerald Twilight. Your thoughts on how Jordan and his rise and fall, all that other stuff. Because they put him in the villain role and kind of, like with Hank Pym in the comics, really kind of shat on his name for the longest time until we got to DC Rebirth. Anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow. I thought I could handle this earlier today, but I had business early this morning and I was kind of exhausted. So I'll get back to streaming some games tomorrow after work. So getting back to some Expedition 33 especially. But I'll see if I can go ahead and fill in some Borderlands 2 while I'm at it. But in any case, take care. I will see you guys tomorrow. And once again, I have a movie review for you guys this Thursday. But after that, I won't be streaming this coming weekend because I'll be extremely busy. But I'll see you the following week after that point. But take care. Have a great week. Peace.